All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to Dress for Success Cleveland's Lunch and Learn. And so today we're extremely excited to talk about this conversation about how to protect yourself with your banking practices. I think we all realize that fraud is increasing dramatically. Um, and that's whether you're doing transactions in person or you're doing transactions online. And so we want to make sure that we take a moment out to talk a little bit about what you can do to be proactive. And so we have an expert here to kind of help us out with that conversation. We have Brendan, who is from PNC, and we also have one of his peers, Nikki Anderson, who is also with us today. So I'm not going to drain any more time because I know we've also have a lot of questions on what we can do. So I will now turn it over to Brendan.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And nice introduction. I do have to say though, Nikki far superior to me. She definitely knows way more. She is the GOAT, hands down. I have to put that out there.
Stop
Um,
being modest.
yeah. All right, but yeah, in terms of identity theft and fraud, there is so much going on nowadays. We see it all the time. People coming in and these scammers, they're getting smarter and they're doing more things to just defraud people and cause havoc. Wreak havoc in all different kinds of ways. So that's sort of things we'll go over to sort of protect yourself from that and some just common things to keep in mind. I do have a little sheet here. I'm trying to share my screen with y'all. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay,
Hmm.
perfect. So yeah, getting into the workshop here. I'd say there's a lot of things that come up often. We see people getting debit card numbers and PIN numbers, doing things a simple way, like looking over your shoulder and seeing that PIN number, or even having card skimmers where it gets a little more intense. There's like hackers who they'll go on your social media and they'll see, pictures. If you have a picture with your children, they'll, use their names and things like that to try to hack your passwords, right? There's a lot of different ways that people are doing things in terms of trying to get your information, right? Because there's a lot of money in it for them. Unfortunately, that, if they put their time and energy into a real job, they probably make a lot of money as well, but instead they want to go the bad way. So something that we have here is email scam. So a lot of times with emails, you'll see that people, if they're a scammer, they'll try to send you to a link and they'll try to put you in distress. Like you have to change your password right now. If you see here, I hope it's big enough for you all, but where it says Yahoo and the link that they want you to click on, it has an extra O in there, right? So things like that we have to be careful of. Um, clicking on links, checking the spelling of everything and making sure that it's all okay, before you click on it, especially where you see the from. Sometimes you want to check that too. I always like to click on it on my phone and make sure that it's from who it says it's from. I recently got an email the other day from an old college professor of mine, and it was the weirdest email. He's like, I have some pictures I want to share with you. And of course, I checked the email. Right. Yeah. I checked the email and it's not his email. It's a completely random email. And it's like, I don't know if it's coincidence or what, but obviously I'm not clicking on any link from a stranger or, and I know it's not my professor. He wouldn't have any pictures to share with me. Like it'd be very odd, right? That was like years ago. Doesn't make any sense, right? So, be careful with things like that. Um, and just always look out. I know more specifically they have scams where something as simple as like seeing an extra O might be a little obvious. There's some where they'll change the font of a single letter. So like the A would be slightly different, and you might not be able to tell that it's different. but it's would be technically a different website. And so if you click on that, it looks like it's Yahoo, but it's still not Yahoo. So you have to be careful of that as well. If you did get an email from Yahoo or any other service telling you that you need to change your password, don't click on the email. Just go to your regular login and then check it that way instead of, clicking on links in your email that you don't understand, right? Um, Especially if they're telling you that you have to do something right away. Just be careful. Slow down. Don't let the emotions get the better of you, and that's going to help you really protect your information, right? Same thing with the phone scams. We see a lot of these, like usually happens to older people. Well, they'll say, "Oh, I'm your grandson," or "I'm your," in this case, says nephew. They say, like, "I need help. I need some money. Help me get out of jail," or "I'm stuck in a foreign country and I can't like leave because I don't have any money." Things like that. Another same thing. They're like, "I really need your help right now." Try to put some pressure on you, put some stress on you to make you do something that you otherwise wouldn't normally do, right? Same thing on this last one. We see like power of attorney fraud again with the elderly and the older people, where someone would put them up for power of attorney, and I've seen this happen before, where the older person doesn't quite understand what's going on, and they'll say they'll say like they want something a certain way, but they can't really get the words out to say exactly what they need, and so somebody else would take advantage of that. And in this case, she was fixing up the house. She bought herself a car, and none of that is helping her aunt there, right? She's doing what she wants for herself, taking the money, stealing things from her house, and meanwhile she has power of attorney and technically a legal right to like manage her funds, but she's doing it the wrong way in an illegitimate way, and taking advantage of her aunt here, right? So things like that. Another thing to be careful of. You might see this happen to other people, and you can get involved. It's more legal route, and but you know there's a lot of these types of different scams that people are doing,
Hey,
right?
Brendan, I just wanted
Yeah.
to kind of go back to that one page that you had, because I know you mentioned about email and with the phone scams,
Hmm.
the text message scams
Yeah.
have popped up a lot, and so same thing with, click this link right away, or,
Hmm.
did you use your card, for this transaction? If this is not you, click here. And so just being careful. I've heard a lot of people have received that
Yeah.
um, as well. And then it's interesting you should bring up power of attorney activity, because I was just
Uh-huh.
dealing with some things with dealing with some paperwork with my dad. And so um what I have to say with that is that it's good to try to probably get on the forefront, because some companies, they may have documentation that needs to be updated so that it has your information on there. But yes, for some
Hmm.
elders, they get to a point where it's difficult for them to hear or to see certain things, so they can't
Right.
really conduct the conversation um, as clear. So trying to be on the forefront, and then not even thinking about. I get it why they're doing it, to protect fraud, and so yeah, cases like what you have there make it very difficult for a lot of other
Hmm.
people to engage with their finances. So I thought these
Right.
were very, very good. I would imagine that pretty much everybody on this call has probably had experience one or two of these communications come through.
Hmm. Yeah. It's really unbelievable, honestly. At a certain point, you all these things just keep popping up, and you keep seeing it, and you hear stories, and you think it wouldn't happen to you. I also recently had like I have a credit card that I haven't used forever. I use it for a balance transfer. I never swiped it anywhere, never used it anywhere. And I had a bunch of transactions on there that I didn't do, and I called up the company. I didn't click on the text message or anything like that. I want to make sure I'm being extra safe and try to find out what's going on there, and I had that taken care of. But yeah, these things happen, and like this was an institution, not PNC, of course, right? And I think they had a hacking recently, so like something like that, we can't even control that. But obviously, just jumping on it and taking care of it as soon as possible, we can try to stay ahead of it.
We had a hand raised by Tamala.
I don't know if it's related to finance because, of course, I've never clicked them, but I noticed a lot lately that they will click some on Facebook. They will tag somebody that I guess they figure maybe you've interacted and is close to you and say, "Oh, I can't believe this person died." I've even gotten a
Hmm.
text message like that. I don't click anything. I go right to the source. Anything happen, I stopped clicking, years ago. I go straight to the page to see if it's real or I call the establishment directly and I also send the phishing emails to their phishing if they have like if PNC has phishing at PNC, I send it. But I'm wondering if the Facebook ones, if that's related to finances or is it just spam? If you've heard anything.
Yeah, no, that's a great question and a great point. A lot of these scams lead back to finance, right? They want to rip people off. They want to get some money out of you. And yeah, of course, I've seen that too a lot, and I look it up and then, if it's on Facebook and I have that same friend on Instagram and I see they just posted something like 30 minutes ago, they, like they're okay, right? And I can see that they're fine, but people are getting their Facebooks hacked a lot. I know somebody who had their Facebook hacked, and they've gotten all sorts of images and photos and things from them. They had their whole phone hacked, right? And so then they would just contact people on their Facebook, and they would say, "Hey, I'm selling this car, or I'm selling this thing, or whatever. Come meet me at my house. Send me the money ahead of time, And then a few people fell for that, and they send the money, and they went to the house, and they're like, "Where's the car? Like, you stole money from me, right?" And they're just causing problems in like this person's life, right? When they're not even involved in that, like their whole account was taken over, right? So things like
Yeah,
that.
it's funny you said
Hmm.
that because it was a young lady. I hadn't seen her in years, but I know how she behaved, and
Yeah.
sent a Facebook message. And I said, "Hey, sis, what do
Hmm.
if you need me, call me on my phone." And they was like, "Oh, are you scared?" And they sent me a copy of her personal photo ID.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And
Same exact
so
thing.
I sent a message to another closer that somebody I knew that was closer to her and said, "Hey, I think either she's been hacked or maybe her phone has been stolen." Well, it took her about 9 months before she could get back on Facebook, and I don't
Wow.
know what
Yeah.
they got into that they had a copy of her ID, but they literally sent me a copy of her
Hmm.
ID.
Yep, same thing happened in this situation. Yeah, she had to get a whole new phone and everything because they got her Apple ID and stuff on her iPhone, and yeah, same exact situation. I don't know why they would send pictures of people's ID to make people feel more comfortable. That's the most strange thing I've ever heard of. But yes. So things like that, where if it seems really odd, it probably is, right? If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Like no one's gonna sell you a new car for $1,000 or whatever it is. So it's like be careful of those things. Yeah. So great points there, Damla. Right. Um, yeah, moving on here. Some of the red flags that you'll kind of know if something's happening with your credit or your personal information. If you ever get denied of a credit card application that you didn't apply for, that's probably a big sign, right? If you see something come in, yeah, look out for that. I would say contact the institution, but something else, be careful of like the paper letters that you get, because that could be another scam too, right? So I would say just go online. Google is usually your friend. If you search up a company and their contact information, it'll come out in a separate box that's not like a website or something. So you can use that to, contact an institution. But again, yeah, be careful of mail letters and things like that as well, right? If you get a denial of service for like utilities, rent, and mortgage, that's listed there, same thing, right? Somebody's probably got your information, your social, things like that, and using that for like credit applications and different types of applications, right? And so a lot of things like your name, your address, your phone number, we can find that online, right? And so like scammers can just look you up and get all that information, put that together and try to, get a credit application. Even something as simple as our social security numbers, those are not random, right? So like the first three numbers determine what state you're in. The next two numbers is like a locality for like cities and stuff like that. And then the last four is a little more personal to you, which they can narrow it down by the time, the year you were born, things like that, right? So
I
if you're,
never knew that, Brendan, about
yeah.
the so
So
say that
yeah,
one more time. You said the
yeah,
first
the
3
first
numbers?
three is the state that you were born in, right? And so some people, there's different, like if you're immigrated from another country, they're not going to have similar numbers, but generally people born in the U.S., the first three would be the state. The next two, I believe, narrows down to the city, and like the area or the city that you were born in. So not if you don't live there, if you were born in a different city, then it might be a little harder for them. And then the last four is more specific to you. Yeah. And so like there's people that will try to figure out, where you're born, where you lived, to narrow down your social and get you that way too as well. Right. Right. So things like if you're on Facebook, I would suggest going on Facebook. You could just change the year that you were born in. People don't really need to know how old you are online. If they're your friends, they already know how old you are, right? Like, and if they didn't, they can just ask you. But I don't think they would be bothered to if you were 5 years older or younger. So that's like something I did as well. I have a completely different year on there than my actual birthday. So things like that, just being careful of as well,
Well,
right?
well, I definitely want to be younger.
Yeah,
So okay.
right. Yeah. So you can do that. Yeah, that's something to be careful with. And if you're like, again, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier with transactions. So if you see transactions on your card and you know it wasn't you, definitely report that right away. A lot of companies, you can freeze the card that you're using if it's a credit card or a debit card. You can freeze it and make sure that nothing's going on there. Always staying on top of a credit report. That's a huge thing. I believe credit is really important. I've always like been working on that since I started my financial journey. And so I would hate for somebody to come along and ruin all that hard work that I did to build it up to get to where I'm at now. And I'm sure you all would feel the same way. So definitely um, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. They all have websites and apps that you can use to like freeze your credit report. There's two different kinds. They're basically the same thing, but there's a credit freeze and a security freeze. The security freeze basically is free. You don't have to pay for it. The credit freeze, they have like a special app that you can use to like turn it on and off. I suggest, if you want to pay the extra for it, you can, but I'd rather just go the free route and use the security freeze. Is there a question?
Yeah, it was from Shauna. She said, when I get a call from a number I don't know, I send it to voicemail and then Google it. If it says spam, then I block the number.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that's great too. And a lot of times, I don't know if you guys get these voicemails too. There's voicemails where it's just silent, or there's voicemails saying like you're approved for some kind of loan or whatever. There's so many different kinds of voicemails. They'll be automated and robots and stuff. Yeah, I just block them all too. For a while I had if you have an iPhone, there's a section in the settings where if it's like a number that's not in your contacts, it can just be sent straight to voicemail and like ignored because these phone call stuff are just getting ridiculous.
We have another hand raised from Tamala.
Um, where I work a couple of years ago, they called the receptionist and asked, "Can you hear me?" And she said yes, and they tried to send an invoice like she had authorized payment
Mm,
for something. So whenever someone, if I do happen to sneak a call through, because I don't usually, I'm like Shauna, I don't open answer calls either. But if I happen to answer one and they ask me, can they hear me or something where it requires a yes or no, I say, how can I help you? And then if they don't say anything, I just hang
hmm
up. But it's taken a while to develop all these safeguards. I got on here, because I do workforce development, and we do have a financial literacy portion, and you want to keep people, safe as well. Will you uh, email this to us, or we are only able to see this during this? time.
Sure. Yeah, you can get a copy of this. I believe
Okay.
you have a.
Yeah, I have, I've received it. Sorry, Brendan, I received it from Dan. So once we are completed, he gave me a version that I can forward to you all after.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I wish we could live in a world where we didn't have to deal with all of these different types of scams. But I mean, sort of like what were saying, Tamla, it is one of those things that you have to think about and practice to be able to protect yourself from it. Because if you never know, then you won't be able to like look out for something or be careful of it, right? So yeah, it's definitely something that like just look into every now and then, and I mean, you can search online, research like what the latest scams are, and it's kind of a weird thing to to look into, right? But then at the same time, there's like things that are common, like time over time, that just like anything else, right? Like in fashion, there are clothes that are popular, and everyone's going to have that clothes. There's going to be scams that are popular, and everybody's going to be running those scams. So things like that, just definitely, stay up to date with what's going on. Um, and then other things, the rest on this list, yeah, IRS reports. If you see like tax returns, that happens. I feel like that happened a lot in the past too, where people would file like with other people's social security numbers, get their tax returns. People will start working jobs in other states. That happened to my mom. She got like she said they said that she owed taxes for like a job in like Kentucky or something like that, and we never lived in Kentucky. She never lived in Kentucky. So things like that, right? Like somebody again probably got her information. They were working under her information, saying that they were her, and they didn't pay their taxes, right? So it's it's yeah. There's always something. Somebody's always figuring out some way to get around the system basically and cheat their way through life, right? So we got medical, yeah, incorrect medical information, people doing insurance fraud. There's lots of insurance fraud as well, where people can put their medical bills basically on your insurance and steal from you that way. Same thing with mail and bills. There's lots of like credit card offers you get if you get your utility bills. People can get that information. Same thing, like change your passwords or apply for things in your name if they've gotten enough information from you after a while. I remember my grandmother told me about there used to be a guy who would go around in the neighborhood. He'd be in a suit, he had a hat on, nice shoes, and a briefcase, and he would dig through garbage, take out paperwork and put it in his briefcase, right? So there's a lot of things you would never think of probably that people are out, you know. And now with technology, it's even more intense because there's so many things. Like I don't know how to code or how to do anything like that or hacking computers. Like I don't know anything like that, but there are people who are they're doing that every day, right? So we got to be extra careful. And then here, these are the things to sort of help you protect yourself against identity theft. If you don't know about annualcreditreport.com, that's a huge one. It's a free place to check your credit. There's a lot of apps out there too as well. I would suggest getting, something so you can track your score and track your credit. That way, if you do see like a new inquiry that wasn't you, you definitely want to call and report it to the credit bureaus that way, right? Financial statements, checking out your bank accounts. I know a lot of people have multiple bank accounts, multiple credit cards, multiple things like that. And so try to make sure you don't have too much where you can't keep track of it all and just always stay on top of that. There's also apps as well where you can see like all your bank accounts and credit cards in one place. So if you're someone who does have a lot of accounts, that might be the way to go for you so that you can keep track of everything that way, right? Um, Next with logins, right? So like emails and usernames and accounts. Something you could do with that, if you keep like separate emails for specific things, so if you have like one email just for all your finance stuff, if you ever got something in that email that wasn't finance related, right, then like that's not important and you just keep everything, specific, right? So then also with your social media, if you have one email that's only on your social media and they get your social media, well, they got that, but at least they're not getting the email that's attached to your like financial accounts, right? Same thing with passwords. The harder the password, the better, right? Again, I'm an iPhone user, so like there's that suggested password option, which is like 20 something characters long, right? It looks crazy. I can never remember any of them, but like it's definitely harder to hack. Of course, if other people have iPhones, they know what it looks like, and they have systems where like it'll just keep generating a different letter, a different number, a different character until it hacks your whole password. So you want to make sure like I like to sometimes if I use one of those suggested passwords, I'll like add an extra number or letter and take away a letter or number or the dash just to make it a little different and make it even harder for them to try and to hack that, right? So yeah, always use like strong passwords, nothing easy like your name and your birth year or something. A lot of people do that. Or like if you have children, a lot of parents always put their children as their password and maybe like how many children they have or simple stuff like that. Try to avoid that as much as you can. Especially if you have it all over your social media or something. It just makes it too easy for them, right? And like we talked about earlier, links and files, if you see stuff like that, yeah, try to avoid it at all costs. Check the email, make sure the email is somebody that you knew was going to send you that. I don't know. I bet it's very rare that anybody's going to just send you a link or send you a photo or an image or a file and they didn't tell you about it beforehand, right? Like that doesn't really happen all that often. So if it does, just double check and be careful with that too. Um, yeah, and then same thing here. The language scammers use to target you in emails. So kind of like how we saw earlier with the Yahoo, they added an extra O. There's also a lot of times if you notice in the text messages or in the emails, you'll see that they'll have a lot of spelling errors, right? And those spelling errors are not like that they just can't spell. They do it on purpose because if you're someone who would just breeze over those spelling errors, you'd probably be more likely to fall for whatever scam that they're doing. And so they're like targeting people who aren't paying attention, basically, right? So try to like, read carefully and make sure you look at it and really are reading whatever the email is, especially if it looks suspicious. And I also notice a lot of the emails that aren't authentic, like the photos are blurry or the images are blurry, the logos are blurry or stuff like that, right? So if you notice that, just like again, slow down, be careful with what you click on or what you're using. Public Wi-Fi. This is a huge one too. A lot of times, if you're using public Wi-Fi, all that information is getting carried through the air between your phone and the router, right? And they're called packages, basically. So it's kind of like Amazon, right? If you order a package from Amazon and it gets lost in the mail, nobody knows where it is, like that can happen. The same thing can happen online. So if you're in a public area, like let's say you're at Starbucks and their Wi-Fi is Starbucks, sometimes people would create their own hotspot and call it Starbucks, but maybe they spell it differently or they change the font on it. And so when you click on that and you connect to that, they're getting all your information that's getting sent back and forth between your phone and whatever website you're using, right? So if you're logging into your bank's website, they would get all that information, that login, and you want to be careful with that too, right? So if you have your own data, just use your own data when you're in a public space if you really have to check it. And then if you need to use Wi-Fi for other things like just surfing the web or nothing that's gonna have any personal information, that's okay, right? But again, be careful with whatever Wi-Fi you're connecting to. And then, yeah, documents, keeping all those in a safe place. A lot of people carry their social security cards. Don't do that if you don't need to. I'm sure we all remember it by now. So you definitely don't need to carry it around with you. And there's very few situations where it's required for you to have your social security card. So I would say again, yeah, just leave it at home, lock it up in a safe place, and keep it somewhere. If you need a like safe deposit box or something, if you don't feel like your home is a good place to keep those safe things, then like try that as well, right? Um, and then shredding things you don't need, like get rid of it, shred it. That's a good way. I know there's like a special thing that I've seen from like the CIA was using, where instead of like just shredding it, they have what's called laundry bluing, which like dyes paper blue and it gets rid of the ink and stuff like that. You don't have to go that far, but if you're if you're really concerned, that's like something else that's just out there that you can use. to like protect your information some more, right? Especially if you're throwing out maybe a lot of paperwork, like, if you kept a lot of paperwork for years and you need to get rid of it, that's something you like keep in mind. It's like $20 for a gallon or something like that. So it's not costly or anything like that either. And yeah, and then same thing, like there's simple stuff. Like if you're going to the ATM and you're typing in your PIN number and somebody's standing too close, tell them back up, tell them get like to move away from you. Don't let them just look over your shoulder and see where you're typing in. Same thing if you're at a store and you're typing it in, you could just cover it and do one of these, before somebody's like real close to you as well. All right. Yeah, here even telling you with your phone passcodes, somebody gets your phone passcode and they see that and they snatch your phone and run. Then they got your phone passcode, which got all your banking information and everything else on there. Same thing, right? Yeah, and then we talked about earlier, like credit monitoring, so Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Great ways to keep track of everything. You can check it, every day, every week, every month. Try to keep like a regular like check on it and put it in your phone. Like get a calendar notification for yourself. That way you don't forget and you're always checking up on it and keeping yourself safe that way too. Um, I would say those apply the same way. Credit freezes, like I said, yeah, it says credit freeze or security freeze. Yeah, those credit locks, usually they ask for like a subscription and pay monthly. The security freezes, you can just go on the website for Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Do a security freeze. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You just hit the little lock and it locks. And then, if there's any applications or anything like that with your information, it won't go through and you'll get an alert for it as well. Right. So that would be the fraud alert right underneath there. All right. If you do become a victim of identity theft, I know the FTC has like a whole website where you put in what happened and you put in some information and you basically make a claim, and they'll give you the steps to of what you need to do to help protect yourself further and sort of recover from whatever situation you just went through here. Yeah, they have it. It's called identitytheft.gov. That would be the place to go to and check out if you did have something that came up, right? So uh, that's about all I got for you today. Anybody have any questions or any other situations to be aware of?
Um, I always got situations, Brendan. Um, the one thing I would say has to do with some of these websites that are appearing on Facebook and like Instagram, for example. I know that a lot of times there's a lot of advertising that's being done and trying to promote their goods. So yes, it's a great marketplace. I had experience where I thought this was a reputable company. They were having a sale. They had the website. They had items that were like on their general website. They were calling this their outlet. And after a while, I noticed that, and I would say, well, 2 weeks, right, or so, I didn't get any kind of confirmation back on, hey, we received your order. Here's your number. Here's estimated time of delivery. So I contacted the credit card company. Well, before I contacted the credit card company, I tried to contact the information that I did get and realized that, the number wasn't correct or, anything like that. So then that's when I contacted my credit card company. So it was a fake website using a reputable company's name. So definitely between, and it's so easy now, right? So many companies. So I try to do more of a practice of, if it's something that I'm interested in, then I get off of the social media site and then I'll go look them up on Google,
Hmm.
and do the Google search that way to find them, as opposed to just going ahead and clicking it on the social media, because it's so convenient, right? So
Right.
that that was one hard lesson to learn. And then the other thing that has come up a lot has been people buying on like Facebook Marketplace, where people are selling their cars or they're selling furniture and things of that nature. And they said about particularly if it's a place where you have to meet someone in person to get the items, to be very careful, to be in safe, well lit places. Be mindful if you have to go to their own personal residence. So there's just a lot where technology has helped make things convenient for us in a lot of ways, and just as how it's helped us, has made it convenient for those who want to practice fraud or anything dishonest, and that. So I just wanted to bring those up too.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great point. I think convenience is the biggest thing that like gets a lot of people to. I mean, even if you look at Amazon, I remember a time where Amazon always had the cheapest stuff, but now sometimes it's more expensive than if you go to the store, and it's like it's the convenience. And I'll say, well, it costs more on Amazon, but I'll get that 2 day shipping. I don't have to go to the store. I still might buy it, right? And I think that's like a lot of times we'll get caught up, and that's like a simple example, but it can get us other places too.
Yeah, Tamla, go ahead. I
Mhm.
see your hand raised.
I don't know if this was in I was trying to find it if it was in your presentation, but I remember during the pandemic, I actually saw a website where it showed you the area and if an elderly person or someone was scammed, and it said it had a list like South Euclid, this person, it was this type of scam. So if you reported it, because you can report them at Ohio, I think at ohio.gov, if there's certain type of scams. And I remember during the pandemic seeing it. I just haven't looked at it in a while, where you can see what type of scams are going on, what type of people reported them, so you have a kind
Mm,
of idea.
that's cool. Yeah, I actually never heard of that. Looks like Nikki just sent it in the
She knows
chat
where it
in
is.
the
Okay.
yeah, in the chat there. Scam tracker.
So the what the Better Business Bureau does is it gets information from reported scams, and they compile a list of those scams, and you can see. And I always recommend, if you're buying from a business, you want to check the Better Business Bureau to see if they're listed, if they have a rating, if it's favorable or unfavorable, and that way you're not going to be victimized by a potential company that just doesn't care about their reputation. People do report, and you can track that. The other thing I didn't hear in his wonderful presentation is Zelle. So we do a lot of things with Zelle, but do you know that you don't have payment protection in Zelle, Cash App, other convenience apps? So I call them convenience apps. They're to be used primarily for transactions between you and a known party. So if an unknown party approaches you and say, "Oh, you can just pay me through Zelle," well, for fraud, Zelle is now revisiting, but it's tough luck really, because you're not supposed to receive products or services and benefit from Zelle. So that's another thing I wanted to add. Just be careful. If you don't know the individual, yeah, I feel like I need to issue a, payment in a better form. One more thing that I have is banks never ask that. It's a little quiz that you guys can take. Banksneveraskthat.com. I put that in the chat as well. It's an online quiz. Would we ask you these questions? And a lot of times you're going to click yes, and really the answer to it is no. So if you want to take that at your leisure, yeah, the state attorney general's office will track that as well. I love the Better Business Bureau, because a lot of times we are trying to do business with smaller companies, or support in, demographics. If you want to buy from that company, then they should have a profile with the Better Business Bureau so that you can be protected as a consumer. And I'm gonna be quiet and I'm going back on mute.
Those were great. Thanks for sending those links. I pulled both of those up. Definitely thank you about those convenience payment apps, right? Because it's so easy when someone's like, "Oh, just cash at me. Oh, just cash at me," and then a lot of different, not just individuals but businesses use those sometimes as payment, and then people don't realize that how they can become a victim from using those. And I never even thought about the consumer protection with that. So that was all great information. Thank you so much, Nikki. Anything else, or Brendan? You had anything else with that?
No, yeah, all that's been great. I think that's about all I've got.
Okay. Nikki, anything else from you? Any more mic drops you gonna give us this afternoon?
Um, no mic drops. I really like focusing on I didn't hear about the inheritance scams or the
Ooh.
I met you on a drill site and I need to come home, so send me some money. So just be cognizant, ask those questions, and check on your family members. You will be surprised how many of them are suffering in silence. I have a family member who was sending like $200 to what she thought was a church member, and that church member is in Texas. How, I mean, we didn't have virtual capabilities, but hey, they were struggling. They wanted to feed their three children, so she was taking from her social security income to send. And we got to talking. She came over for dinner and we got to talking, and I said, well, she said, I'm so glad you had me over because I'm helping a friend of mine. And, I really didn't know what I was going to eat because the first was coming up that within the next couple of days. And we're like, well, where's all your money going? And come to find out, this person was a scammer. When we tried to call him on the phone, it came back to an overseas number. And they're chatting online. So you really don't need to see the number. But I'm like, yeah, no, let's call him now because tell him I want to help him. And and so we're talking, I'm having more difficult conversations, and of course you get the disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And then when people come into banks or you go to different locations and they tell you, well, don't tell the bank what we're doing. That should be indicator number one that something is wrong. If you want to keep it secret, then it's probably not in my best interest. So those are the things that I always think about as I'm thinking about family members, more vulnerable people, older people who want to who do good by others, but they're being scammed. So just check on your peeps.
Yeah, good advice. Tamla, you had your hand raised.
Well, I actually raised my hand to ask another question, but I want to comment on that. Um, they're also embarrassed, if they do find out that they've been scammed, and they don't take proper steps, to protect themselves afterwards. And not at my question yet, but funny thing, I work with the Cleveland International Film Festival seasonally, and their opening um, night movie was a kind of a fiction true story about a grandmother that was scammed. They said her grandson was in the in jail, and she mailed $10,000, but comedically she wouldn't got her $10,000 back. So if you ever see this movie, it's called Thelma. It should be out shortly. Uh, take a look at it. Richard Roundtree is actually in it. It's one of his last performances, and the actress, I can't think of her name now. I think her last name is Squid. She has some ties to Cleveland. She's 93 years old, but the actual Thelma is 103. So it is very interesting. She figures out where her money is, and they go get her money. So it's funny. But my question was about, I happened to find out about this because I go on Facebook to look for information to add to some of my email blasts. So I literally signed up for this like maybe around 10:30, a quarter to 11. Now will my email be like on some type of a list for the lunch and learns, because I would have sent this out to some of the other community partners and some of the patrons that we work with in order for them to, be a part. So I just want to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, great question. And then what we can do too is we'll make sure that you're on our list, our contact list for our newsletter too. So 2 times a month we have a newsletter that comes out called Success Press. So I'll list down a lot of our activity, which will include those workshops. And then just in case if you don't get that or someone who doesn't receive that, they can always go to our website as well under client services. And then on that page, see upcoming workshops. So that's one way to see what's coming. And then also on that same page, anything that's been recorded. And so some of our past workshops are also listed on
Oh,
there.
great.
But I'll
Thank you.
I'll make sure that you get on our email distribution list for our newsletter.
Great. Thank you. I have to
Hmm.
check because they send them the clutter so much you miss them.
Yes, yep, I understand that. I can understand that. Um, wow, this has been some riveting conversation. Who knew, right? But kind of like what we talked about, just as we have more conveniences to help us with our financial transactions and management, the people who are dishonest are just as savvy and try to figure out as well other ways. So it's good to keep informed. I think this is a topic that would probably be around for a while, and so we'll probably not only talk about it now. I'm sure we'll talk about it later on. I know we had Brendan on that was in December, and we were talking about during the holidays what are things to keep in mind for holiday shopping. So it just has to be our own personal financial management. How do you make sure to stay on top of those things? The other thing that made me think, Nikki, when you said inheritance, there's always two people who are coming up with these fake financial scams with investments. So that is another thing, again, where they're communicating so much online through email, through a social media platform, and you just have to do more due diligence to look up information, whether it's looking it up on the website that we just got from the bbb.org to find out if they are legit. Just make sure you just protect yourself and definitely keep an eye out for those who are more vulnerable because they may not be as in tuned or able to be in tune with a lot of these things. So checking in, I like Tamla how you said that sometimes it could be that they're probably too embarrassed to even bring up what may have happened um, to them. And so as we can see, even from our own personal experiences, a lot is happening to everybody right now. So I'm glad we had this conversation. So we are going to continue with our conversations for this month. We'll be focused on financial literacy because April is Financial Literacy Month. So please be in tune to some more of our conversations. In fact, we're going to have Nikki back with us. I think that's April 30th. Can't remember my own dates anymore. Seems like the time keeps flying by, and I keep wondering how did the heck did we get to April, right? And so I can give you all the dates right here. So we have April 11th, which is this Thursday. We're going to talk about estate planning. And so there's a lot of documentation related to that. And sometimes when people hear estate, they think like you have to be a multi-millionaire. But we know that definitely since the pandemic, more has changed with how do you protect yourself, protect your family members, and how do you manage your estate. So we will talk about that. It's called Get Your House in Order. So we'll have that this Thursday. Then we have another lunch and learn, and this one's going to be on April 23rd. We're going to talk about health savings accounts because a lot of times people may have this offered with their employer or they might have received some options to opt in and really to talk about whether it's worth it or not and to understand the different options for health savings accounts. We're also going to talk about on April 25th, we're calling this one Taking Care of Home. So, a lot of times people do a lot of work with getting their mortgage, getting their house, but there's a lot of other financial things that you should do on an annual basis or every so often to check up with such a hefty investment. So, we're going to talk about what are some of those things that you should check with when it comes to taking care of home. And then we're going to have Nikki come back And maybe Brendan, maybe you jump back in too. We're going to talk about reducing debt, best ways how to manage it. Because you know what? Back in the day, it used to be only use your credit card for emergencies or certain purchases. Well, guess now, the emergency is putting the gas in the car. The emergency is just affording groceries because everything is, so sky high. So, what are some, more useful ways and how to manage your debt? So, we're going to talk about that. So, a lot of robust conversations for the month of April. Again, thank you to Brendan for doing an outstanding job. Nikki, thank you for some of those other mic drops that kind of hit us with some other tips. So thank you both. Thank you, Tamala, Shauna, and Melinda for jumping on today. Thank you for the eclipse day after. For joining on. And so we look forward to seeing you on a future call. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Have a great
Bye.
day.
Bye.